started? Yes, thank you.
Hi, we're with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. It's kind of a mouthful when you're trying to answer the phone and say that all the time. So usually we just say a DRE or Division of Real Estate and things like that, so it makes it a lot easier. So I have Jennifer with me. She's worked on appraisal complaints, and then Felicia, she works more with me with doing the real estate complaints. But Jennifer does help out now and then when we do get overwhelmed with all the different complaints that we have. Supposed to work. All right, there you go. So we're responsible for protecting the public. So a lot of times you're out there doing your real estate stuff, you have your ethics class and stuff like that. So obviously a lot of real estate agents, want to act ethically and do the best they can, use due diligence, be the fiduciary responsibility. But a lot of times it's the perception of the customer or your client that might not be happy with your service, or they think they may have had something happen by the other real estate agent, so they're going to file a complaint against somebody. Again, it's the perception. So a lot of times we get these complaints, and we need to figure out what it is to do. So in Lee County alone, we have over 16,000 different agents and corporations, stuff like that, we're trying to regulate. And so we have complaints coming in all the time. So to help you guys help us, we've got streamlined online services. You can verify your license, file a complaint against other agents, or help your customers if they feel they've been wrong. They can file a complaint. They can go online here, apply for a license, instant public records, and check application status. Oh, the other thing I want to point out is you can go on myfloridaLicense.com and get the app. If you download the app, it's kind of a nice thing too, so you can check, as we get into later on, you can double check, like if you're going to be hiring a contractor, a roofer, or you need an air conditioning unit person, come in, double check, make sure that they're licensed, that they have their contractor license. You can also check the other real estate agent, make sure that they're licensed and stuff like that, because we do have complaints come in sometimes where the agent isn't quite with the broker yet, or in between brokers, so you really might be dealing with a license that's currently active, but I mean, active, unlicensed, unactive. So it goes through different things like that, so you make sure that they're licensed. On here, again, to go back one little slide here, the far right, the online services, and then click on the other one, which is the business services. You can go down and scroll and look at other complaints that happen. You can do your criminal self-reporting if you get in trouble, file your complaints and things like that. So all this is in here. There's a bunch of these tiles here that look like that says real estate commission. So scroll down, find that tile, and then click on that, and it gives you a lot of other information that you can do the things you want. So I guess last year we had over 4,000 complaints, or on average, but I think we're going to probably have a lot more complaints this year, because I understand that there's a lot of people rushing in to buy a lot of properties very quickly, because I guess there's the demand for property right now. So I have a feeling we're going to be running into a lot of appraisal and a lot of real estate transaction complaints based on people rushing through and not doing their checklist. But if you do need to file a complaint, again, myfloridaLicense.com, go on there and kind of click on these little arrows over here, the chevrons, over to that little hand. After you click on that hand, this screen will come up. You got the little drop-down box you can click on, whether it's real estate broker, real estate instructor, partnership, school, individual, whatever it is. Once you click on that, you can start filling out the form online. But we're seeing a lot of people do their own, like Word document or something like that. Say, see attached, they fill out the main stuff, and then they can submit their own rating assignment, or sorry, not rating assignment, but their own complaint. Oh, okay, thanks. So we have over 33 investigators, 7 regions that we work on to do these different, to help investigate, take care of these complaints. And investigators will try to talk to everybody, because we want to make sure that we're doing this fairly, making sure that we're getting all the right information that's needed. So we'll collect documents, we'll be talking to witnesses, we'll be talking to the other agents, we'll be talking to everybody, stuff like that. So we give everybody a lot of scrutiny to kind of look at who the players are and what their knowledge was and what they should have known so that no one's being treated unfairly. And after we get the complaint done, we send our report to our boss, and then it goes over to the Office of General Counsel, where they'll look it over and then, whether they want to go forward, do anything, dismiss the case, issue a letter of guidance, or depending on what they feel the severity of the case was. When I'm checking the app, make sure that the contractors are licensed. A lot of times, I don't know if you guys want to raise your hand or not, but you have a client who's out of state and he's up in New York or she's up in New York, and they say, hey, you find out that their roof is leaking, that the AC broke down, and you start acting as a general contractor right away, but saying, hey, look, I'll find someone to fix that AC for you, I'll find someone to fix that roof for you. So you start kind of acting as a general contractor. So as soon as you go over $5,000, then that's when the general contractor should be brought in. So again, it's always good until you get caught or have problems or something happens. And then, because when I worked on the regulation side, I had a couple different agents that got hit pretty hard on these things as unlicensed activity. The problem with that too is if you do roofing, air conditioning, and then fix their plumbing or something like that, that's 3 different licenses that were violated. So they get 3 different complaints. So they start to add up very quickly. So it's important to know what you can do as far as helping out or contracting, doing things like that. So the common violations are escrow, appraisals, failure to self-report, licensing, advertising, and unlicensed activity. And then with escrows, I'll turn it over to Jennifer and she'll talk about escrows.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Fuller. I handle the appraisal side and occasionally the real estate side. There are 7 of us in the state, so if you have an appraisal complaint, it'll probably be handled through me. But for escrow, the common violations for escrow is failure to immediately place your funds with your broker. As a sales associate, you have 24 hours to place your funds with your broker, so that at the end of the next business day. A sales associate cannot take money in their own name, and if they fail, for the broker, the escrow violation would be failure to account, deliver rental funds deposits upon failed transactions, and failure to notify the Department of Deposit Disputes. If there is a deposit dispute, the broker has 15 days to notify FREC that there is that deposit dispute. And if you go online to myfloridalicence.com, there will be the escrow dispute forms, so you can just fill them out online and submit them. So an example of escrow violation that we've handled is the broker, his client terminated his management agreement, and he failed to return all the rental proceeds and his deposits, the escrow deposits. So the person, he unfortunately, licensee lost his license and had to pay fines and costs. Okay, so for appraisals, appraisers have to abide by Florida statutes, Florida administrative rules, and they also are obligated to apply by Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, otherwise known as USPAP. So USPAP is a federal document that was adopted by Congress in 1989. Appraisers have to abide by ethics rule. The appraisers must promote and preserve public trust and observe the highest standards of professional ethics. And appraisers must not disclose assignment results to anyone other than the client unless they have written authorization from the client. So a lot of common complaints I get is that appraisers won't talk to the realtors after the appraisal is completed. And a lot of times realtors don't understand is that they're not allowed to, because even though the buyer is paying for the appraisal, they are not the client. So they cannot discuss it with anyone but the client. So that's the lender or the AMC. So common appraisal complaints that I receive is that the appraisal report contains errors that significantly affect the appraisal. There's bias, negligence, or misleading appraisal report. Appraiser is not familiar with the market areas, which is a competency rule, and failure to use reasonable diligence, and fail to communicate an appraisal without good cause. So a lot of common complaints today with the market is that appraisers are not completing their assignment. So as a realtor, you have the ability to file a complaint against an appraiser for certain violations. And one of them is if they fail to communicate their appraisal. If they just take the assignment and don't do it, and then there's a lot of time on it. And then another thing that appraisers that are common with realtors to file a complaint against appraisers is competency. So if your appraiser comes down from, say, Tampa to do an appraisal in Lehigh, there may be a competency issue because he or she may not be familiar with the market area. So as a realtor, if you feel like they're not competent and they don't know the market, that you are able to file a complaint online as well. Okay, another area of common violations is failure to self-report. So in Florida, if you are convicted of a crime, which is a misdemeanor or a felony, you have to report it to FREC within 30 days. Even if it is something as simple as driving on a suspended license, that's considered a criminal charge, so that has to be reported. If you are adjudication withheld, so your case goes to probation, you're not adjudicated, you still have to report that as well. So I always say, just report it regardless. And if it's not needed, then you don't have to worry about it. But a lot of times people don't realize that needed to be reported. Because sometimes, people get their driver's license suspended due to child support or other issues that aren't criminally related, but it still ends up in a criminal charge that needs to be reported. So licensees examples, we've had licensees fail to report their theft, and as a result, they were suspended for 120 days, they were fined costs of over $2,000 and had to have 28 hours of conviction. So if you don't report them too, we've had other ones who are, their license has been suspended, fines and costs, and again, education. And that is all I have. I'm going to let Felicia come up and talk about unlicensed activity.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Felicia McEwan-Watts. I am one of the investigators for the DBPR Division of Real Estate here in Fort Myers, along with investigator Michael and Jennifer as well, who handle license and appraisals investigations. Formerly, I handled ULA prior to moving over to licensing, and we currently have our ULA investigators in our headquarters, which is in Orlando, Florida. They handle all of the ULA or unlicensed activity investigations for the state. And so if you do see unlicensed activity, of course, you can go to our website that Investigator Michael had pointed out earlier, and you can file a complaint there. It will more than likely be handled by one of them. But the penalty for unlicensed practice is that a person may not operate as a broker or sales associate without being the holder of a valid and current active license thereof. Any person who violates this paragraph commits a felony of the third degree, punishable as by statute 775.82 or 775.83, or if a corporation has provided in 775.83. And unlicensed activity investigators will get a variety of different complaints. Normally, it usually falls under the issue of a bar sale. And for those of you that, of course, know what a bar sale is, it is the services that require a real estate license. So anyone who's appraising, buying, selling, advertising, auctioning, renting, or providing rental information lists, selling, or leasing, or exchanging, any of those persons or anyone who performs any service of real estate for someone else and for the compensation or mere expectation of compensation has to be licensed. So that also includes anyone who appraises or attempts to appraise real property for another for compensation. That excludes services that must be performed by a licensed or certified appraiser under Chapter 475. Anyone who auctions or attempts to auction real property for another for compensation. Anyone who sells or attempts to sell real property for another for compensation, or anybody who attempts to buy real property for another for compensation. Anyone who rents or leases or attempts to rent or lease property for another for compensation. Unfortunately, that can be a gray area for us in real estate. That can fall into a license or an unlicensed investigation. A lot of times we will have situations in which There are property management companies that are out there. They do not necessarily have to be licensed. However, there are certain technicalities that may make it fall under the realm of the Division of Real Estate or under the Division of Hotels and Restaurants, depending on what types of properties are being rented and where the money is going to. So obviously, if it's an unlicensed person that's collecting funds for themselves, that may or may not necessarily be a violation. And so you might see cases like that pop up from time to time. A lot of times we fall into the unlicensed category with property management companies. The best thing to keep in mind when it comes to unlicensed activity or whether or not it constitutes unlicensed activity is, of course, to go back to our website and to always file a complaint. From there, our complaint analysts are usually the people who will handle the case and make a determination as to whether or not to pass this on to one of us to investigate. Sometimes we also end up with unlicensed activity for realtors who may have an inactive license. So we encourage you to check your license to make sure that all of your information is up to date. Please call our main headquarters. I'm not sure who the people are, but I can get that information for you just to make sure that your license is active, that you met all your requirements, because unfortunately sometimes an inactive license can also fall into an unlicensed activity investigation, especially if you're doing anything regarding real estate. We've also had cases in which real estate investments can be a very tricky area. You have people who may have their own real estate investments corp, and they're buying and selling property, and sometimes that gets very convoluted, especially with sales associates, and so sometimes that may also fall into the realm of unlicensed activity. So as Jennifer, the previous investigator, had said before, if you have any questions or anything, or if you feel that it may be a violation, we always encourage you to go to our main website and to file a complaint. You can file a complaint anonymously. Just make sure that when you are filing a complaint that you don't include any personal information, because all of that is subject to our public records law, and those things can be released. So if you are concerned or if you have any kind of questions about anything, it's safe to err on the side of caution and always file that with us, and then we can always determine what steps to take from there. Other areas that we also cover that go into maybe gray areas within the unlicensed activity also goes with the sale of a business as well as advertising. And so the next section that I'll be covering is advertising. And so under Florida Statute Chapter 475.25(1)(c), advertisement must not be fraudulent, false, deceptive, or misleading. It must include the name of the licensed brokerage firm, or the licensed name of the brokerage firm, I'm sorry. And when the licensee's personal name appears in the advertisement, at the very least, the licensee's name must be used in the manner in which it's registered with the commission. So for instance, if you have a nickname, a lot of real estate agents use nicknames in their advertisements. Just make sure that your last name is included or your nickname is included in quotes. So call John, Johnny Masters. You can put that in quotes. We've had violations, unfortunately, at times in which somebody will put their nickname, like call Jill or call this person, and not include the name of their brokerage or the name or their last name in which they can identify where this person works. So we just encourage you to, again, refer to the Florida statutes for any advertisements to make sure that it falls within the guidelines of our rules and regulations. Of course, that also includes internet advertisements, so the brokerage firm must be placed adjacent to or immediately above or below the point of the contact information. In the past, we've had advertisements in which the person's name shows up or the brokerage name is in teeny tiny letters at the bottom and the person's name is usually in like really huge letters. Of course, that rule has changed recently, as you know, and so now it has to be the equal font size of the person's name as well. For team and group advertising, a name or logo that is used by one or more real estate licensees who represent themselves to the public as a team or a group. This is covered under the Florida Administrative Code 61J2-10.026. You must perform license activities under the same broker or brokerage. So the name has to be registered with the broker, and there has to be a designation, or there has to be a person who's designated to ensure, to make sure that the team or the group is keeping up with the regulations that are required. And your name must not include certain words suggesting that the team or group is a separate real estate brokerage or company from where they're registered under. So, for instance, it can't be the real estate team. You can't use words such as real estate, group, agency, associates, corporations, LPs, partnerships, properties, property, real estate, realty, or similar words that kind of give the impression that maybe you're running a separate organization from the brokerage that you're registered with. So LLCs, unfortunately, are sometimes where we get some of our investigations. So for instance, there will be a team that has a registered LLC that is separate from the brokerage that they're working with. That can possibly lead to a violation. So again, just make sure that you're following the Florida Administrative Code and the Florida statutes to ensure that you are within the regulation standards. And this is pretty much it. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Just to go over what we covered, our previous investigators covered online services, complaints, contracting while as the owner's agent, and the maximum in which is required, which is $5,000. Common violations, which include escrow, appraisals, failure to self-report criminal convictions, licensing, advertising, as well as unlicensed activities. And so I hope that the information that we shared with you today will be useful to you. But we're here to answer any questions, and if you have any concerns, feel free. I'm not sure what else to do at this point. Yes. The DBPR customer number, by the way, for anyone who'd like to write this down, it is 850-487-1395. Again, the DBPR customer number is 850-487-1395. And any questions that we're not able to answer, I'm sure they will be able to answer for you. So.
I have a question for Jennifer.
Yes.
I'm curious in regards to escrow, how many calls you get regarding escrow. It's very common here in our part of Florida where escrow is held with title companies and attorneys. And I think it's unfortunate that many folks don't realize that FREC extends to brokers escrow, but not title companies and attorneys. How many calls do you get regarding that, or what type of advice can you offer folks?
You mean as in if the title company doesn't turn over the deposit?
An escrow dispute, or he said, she said type of stuff where they're thinking, well, this is a FREC issue when they've held escrow outside of the brokerage.
I haven't had any of those cases where they've come from the title broker, because most of the cases that we deal with, actually the broker has to have escrow and property management, that type of stuff. The title company is probably held to a different federal statute than the companies in Florida, because it's like banking.
Yeah.
Do you have that issue?
The only time because I know, like you're saying, a lot of brokers now, they don't hold it, they give it to the third party to hold. So they wait till after an investigation, or they try to determine who the best, they kind of make their own mind up who is entitled to that escrow. Because it's like, for example, the buyer backs out and they say, I want my escrow money back. They say, no, it goes to the buyer, to the seller. So it kind of comes down to them making that decision. But we had one case recently where, like I was talking about, the person was unlicensed at the time. He thought the broker took his license, but he didn't. So he engaged in a sale, and he ended up with the broker by the time it closed. So there's the escrow money, the commission, everything was sitting there that they couldn't really figure out what to do with it until after the investigation. So then it came down to the title company making that decision to give it to the other broker instead for that time period.
But I know that if the escrow is not returned and it's held by an attorney, you can make a bar complaint. Because I've actually had cases against attorneys, so there are ways that you can make a bar complaint. And they will investigate and determine whether they've held that money or it should be turned over. probably the same as for a title company as well. There's a way to file a complaint against them. We just don't happen to deal with them on that basis, but I know that there are ways to go after attorneys who don't turn over money. I mean, because we've had attorneys in Fort Myers who are jailed for holding escrow, you know, or proceeds. They can hold proceeds too. So,
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Say I have a notary, I'm a notary in the state of Florida. Does Front view it as an issue if I'm notarizing documents that are pertinent to a listing? For instance, a quitclaim deed, procured on someone's deathbed.
As in like
And
a
then I get the
conflict of
listing.
interest?
I'm sorry?
As in like that would be a conflict of interest? It's your listing?
Correct.
Yeah, it'll probably fall under the notary laws and stuff like that, because usually you can't notarize contracts that you're a party to. That's
So if
why-
I notarize a document and then I get the listing,
You could call the customer care center because they can answer those questions. Because we're, as investigators, are not allowed to give you any legal advice or interpret the statute for you. But that customer care center in Tallahassee, they definitely can answer those questions. So I would refer you to that because I'm not sure whether it becomes a conflict of interest or not.
I think
Because you're listing.
the Association of Realtors have their lawyer hotline, they have some kind of free hotline, I believe you can call it. Yeah, so you can call the legal hotline that might be able to give you a better answer than we'd be allowed to give you.
Second question. Just had a transaction where I made an offer on a property and the listing agent decided that they weren't going to do anything for like a week. They took multiple offers, didn't call for highest and best, didn't do anything of that nature. They just held it out for like a week or so and then no return call, no response to our offer. They just chose one and finally put it pending. The entire time that it was listed as active.
Yeah, that'd basically be like probably your ethics board or the hotline, because when we get a case like that, we can't really, it's hard for us to really prove that there was intent to withhold or to diddle daddle, you know, so it's kind of one of those gray areas that we get complaints similar to that, so it's kind of like there's really no witness. It's just how you would perceive it, how the listing agent broker perceived it. So it's kind of like, okay, well, it's again, he said, she said, well, whatever. So it's one of those gray areas where it'd probably just be kind of a dismissed case, because it's plus to finding enough to make it legally sufficient would also be a little difficult as well.
Well, we still encourage you to still file it if you wish, because of course, before it comes to us, our complaint analysts usually handle that. And so you're more than welcome to provide any documentation to support whatever it is that you see, and from there, they might make the determination as to whether or not it proceeds into it.
Are you hearing complaints like this now in this market? Because it's commonplace to have 25, 30 offers on a property.
Not quite yet, but I had some cases similar to like what you're talking about, where the listing agent tried to do some other stuff. They call it like the straw man, kind of create another buyer that's not really there to try to drive the price up. So this guy is coming in too, but I got this one here. So then he basically did a multiple offer with himself and some fictitious other person. So it's kind of a strange case, but again, because you think about a lot of cases that we do get, a lot of the big key wording is that have been found guilty of certain items like that. So usually we're getting a case after there's like a civil court or other judgment going on, stuff like that. So we're kind of going off of what they do. Because a lot of times, a lot of people, they do their complaints to us first, hoping for us to do something, so then they can go to their civil, get our information, which we don't allow to give out anyway. But they try to come to us first before they start their civil case against certain problems that they may have had. So a lot of times, think about if it's a lot of money involved, you feel that you were wrong monetarily, that'd probably be more of a civil or litigation or other issue other than what we do.
But if you're feeling like they didn't present all offers to the buyers, like they're obligated to present all offers, you definitely can file a complaint, or the analyst will tell you whether it's legally sufficient.
You can always do that in conjunction with, with filing a civil complaint, with filing a complaint with the police department. All of that information, when you get that, also comes to us as well. We'll probably ask you for that anyway. If it does become a complaint. So we're just in supplement to whatever other methods or steps you should take.
Seeing that as a licensee, you're working under a broker, will there ever be a system by which if the broker by accident or deliberately terminates a sales associate's license, that there's some sort of an alert to the sales associate? Because otherwise, to ensure that your license is active, you literally have to check every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes to make sure you are compliant. So, but I've heard of it where agents are working, they don't even realize that their license has been terminated by their broker.
Yeah, if a case did come up like that, we'd kind of go back into our, what's called our Versa records, or department records, and it would basically look and see he or she was with that broker, and then we'd go talk to the broker and find out what happened. So there would be, again, that would be a good one to open up a complaint against the broker for why did you discharge my license without me knowing.
Because there is no notice.
There's no
to us.
technical alert, that's not like an IT
Yeah.
thing. that
And
they
sometimes
can
it
alert.
happens as, you know, somebody's in a hurry, transposes, and we hear it happen all the time, and oops, sorry, went to do somebody else.
And that's something I can bring up with our, director, because they'll ask where it goes, so I can put that on there as well, an alert.
Because, I mean, it is something that could.
Because it's like user input error, could be like
Yeah,
you said, they
I
went
mean,
to terminate
you know.
somebody else and wound up terminating.
Right.
Through about 10 screens.
Yeah, that we could easily look up and stuff like that. So if a complaint came against you, because a lot of times people do use that DPR website to find out, hey, this person's license is currently inactive, it's active, inactive. They look it up, and then then you find, well, you go talk to your broker then, because if they did file a complaint, we'd then go talk to the broker and kind of go through and talk to everybody. So it's kind of a...
Because it really puts the sales associate at a significant disadvantage, because what if you're out showing property over the weekend, somebody flipped the switch on Friday by accident, you write an offer, I mean, even the monetary damages, you can't earn a commission if you don't have a license. You're not even supposed to show, so besides the fact that I just think that there should be some sort of a notification if somebody does anything to your license.
Well, the main thing too, if you had a listing and then somewhere in between also your license is not inactive, it's still under the broker, so he would be getting, or she would get the commission and then still get you, paid, because then unless they're trying to get out of paying you the commission and just activate.
And
your
there are brokers out there that are not so nice.
Yes, I guess we can say we've seen a few complaints like that as well, where they try to dishonor their
Agreements.
independent contractor license or their agreement, things like that.
Yeah, they just can magically disappear.
Yeah. So yeah, we had some complaints like that. So again, it's kind of going through the process, and
It's just pretty nice for a sales associate or a broker associate to be able to
To get like a
protect them.
push or like a phone alert or something that.
Some sort of notice, yeah, because I mean, just to say, hey, listen, your broker just zapped your license, so that they don't go out and do something.
In reality, though, it's not that simple. You go through about 5 screens, so,
Well,
I agree, notification's nice,
Put it
but it
this
is
way,
a little more.
It's been happening quite frequently.
Well, when we receive those cases, most times, as Michael has said, we will ask for all that documentation. We are able to look at when that license was with that brokerage and when it ended or terminated. And so it's just for us, because we're a neutral party, we're just accepting all that information. And so we just encourage you that if that does happen to you and a complaint is opened up against you, to just provide as much documentation as possible. We don't determine guilt or innocence. We're not here to, work against you or make your life hard. Most of our cases, if you're licensed and a complaint is open against you, it's confidential. With unlicensed activity, it's a little bit different. If a determination is made, normally that gets sent to the state attorney's office, and that's a whole nother process. So it just depends on where that complaint falls, how we handle it. But if it does happen to you, do know that we're here to assist you, to make sure that you can have your voice heard in situations like that, and to provide as much documentation as possible, because then that helps us to be able to present that to the Office of General Counsel, our attorneys, and from there on.
But if you have the app on your phone, I know you're writing in time with, contracts, but you can check your license actually before you.
I know, but technically, it just would be a nice to have to
Absolutely.
Right.
kind of be alerted, hey, listen, your license, you are currently no longer licensed.
Right,
Find a
yeah.
new broker.
I will put that as.
I mean, just a house, it would even eliminate the whole investigation of having to
Right.
figure out who did what when.
Right.
Yes.
Do you guys still do audits, or is that no longer, you no longer do audits? I haven't
still
heard
do.
that. I know I heard they were doing it maybe a couple of years ago, but have you stopped, or do you still continue to do audits?
Well, with COVID, they've stopped, but there is an audit team who just strictly audits real estate offices. But as an appraisal investigator, we do audit appraisal offices as well. It just hasn't, with COVID, it's been put on the back burner, so.
We've been auditing sole proprietorships, brokers as well, so, but as she said, the audit team usually handles all of that.
But we are doing inspections, office inspections again. So
Yeah.
every quarter, we are given some that we have to perform. It's like a computer-generated list. So every office needs to be inspected because that's what FREC wants. So even when you don't have escrow, they still do office inspections.
Yes.
I'm going by my memory, which isn't always very good, but we had an escrow dispute in my office, and the escrow was over 50,000. And again, going by my memory, I remember nobody could help me. Like I called you guys, I called FREC, and everybody, because it was over 50,000, were kind of like, didn't know what to do. I want to say the form said it was up to 50,000. Again, I don't 100% remember, but we ultimately had to hire an attorney to handle it. It's what?
That's usually how we start.
With over 50,000?
Doesn't matter, any escrow dispute can be settled by filing an interpleader action with the court.
Are you sure you're not talking about the recovery fund? Because the recovery
No.
fund provides help to up to 50,000.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because the escrow, I don't believe there's really any limit on it, because if you got $1 million home, you're gonna be easily at 50,000.
No, I know, and this was like a house in Naples, but yeah, it was, or maybe it was over 100,000.
And what was the underlying conditions of the escrow not being in dispute? That the buyer's trying to back out, or?
Yeah, again, I don't remember, it's been a couple of years, but I just remember everyone was kind of like, here, call them, I don't know, here, call them, I don't know, and even the attorneys were kind of like, there wasn't a form, I guess. Because like I said, I can't remember the form, but it either was anything over 50,000 or 100,000.
Yeah, because usually in the purchase agreement, there might be some addendum in there about the escrow, it's gonna be held with so-and-so.
Right.
And then in case you back out, but then again, that's where we probably wouldn't get involved with the contract consent, because it might be worded that, because it might be contingent upon inspection or other stuff like that, where if the inspection didn't pass or they didn't get qualified for the loan, they get their money back. So again, that's then probably why there was, no one could probably help, because it became probably a legal issue of disputing the contract.
Yeah, I remember it had something to do with the dollar amount, but I'll have to look back on it.
Yes.
Another thing we're starting to see a lot is people that have are signing a contract. We've seen it on some of the higher end properties, so they're not really the deeded owner. They have an offer on, they have a contract on the property, and then they are listing their assignment of contract, and they are behaving like a for sale by owner. So as the licensee, we're dealing with this contract holder and doing all the negotiations. They're showing the property. One of them said, well, I have a financial interest in the house and therefore I'm a for sale by owner and I can do this under the law. And I kind of went, really?
Yeah, because if they aren't on the actual title at the time, they have the financial interest, that would be probably something for the lawyers to look at. Because now, technically, yeah, they can say, yeah, I have it somehow, I have that ownership, so yeah, they can say, for myself, I'm selling my property, where they don't have to go through the broker, if that's what they're trying to do.
Well, what they're trying to do is they're kind of then listing that assignment of contract as a limited service, and we as the licensees are dealing directly with them. And it's not until you start digging that you realize that really what they're selling is the contract that they have on that property, but they're showing the property, they're doing open houses, they're doing all of this.
Yeah.
And it's happening a lot.
Yeah, if you see something like that, probably a good complaint to put in, because I'm not sure exactly, it'd be probably one of those lawyer hotline kind of things, because again, we don't make the determinations, we just do the investigations to say this is what happened, and then the lawyers will make that determination of what they want and how they perceive that is happening. So yeah, I can see that'd be a good, great area to look into.
So I had a meeting a couple weeks ago with Vicky and Michael with the unlicensed.
Yeah, they were here last week.
Yeah, so we did it at one of our meetings, and that topic came up. And if someone has a property under contract and not licensed, they're advertising it out across the board.
Unlicensed activity.
Yeah.
You can, that would go to the ULA. You definitely can file a complaint. Someone's doing that.
It's a grueling process filing a complaint.
Well, it's online, so you just have to submit it. You can submit it anonymously, like Mike said. Just don't submit it from your house if you want it to be anonymously, because
I know.
IP
You have
address.
to do it by mail with no return address or anything like that, because people will email us anonymously, but then it says johnsons.com or whatever, so it has their name on there and kind of says who they are. Yes?
Are email signatures considered advertising?
No.
Just I see like a vast.
Well, what do you see?
Well, you know, like if some people don't set up their signature from their phones, so like they'll email and there's no way of knowing, you know, that they're a licensed agent. I mean, if it's not in their email address, you know, the actual address. So like their signature lines, like I said, coming from a phone or even from their email sometimes, it just.
Because the main question is, how did you get the email in the first place, or what was the contact for you to get that email? Because, you know what I'm saying is that, where did the email come from? Did they just email blast, or were they off of a listing that you contacted them the email?
Sure, yeah.
So that's the big
yeah.
question, is how
Right.
you got that email.
Okay.
Because the other thing too, a lot of the, some agents too, for example, there'll be a sales associate, they have some kind of Airbnb thing going, doing short-term rentals, but in their short-term rentals and other things that they're doing on the side, it says, oh, I'm also a real estate agent doing blah, blah, blah. But then you click on that link, now you're thinking they're the broker, and that brings you to, they work for Joe's real estate company, and then they have the right advertising there, but because their other webpage is showing that they're a real estate agent, that's where some people get in trouble, because now they're blending two different licenses together. They're blending two worlds together, where they're looking like they're a broker or one ad, which is the false advertising or misleading, to bring you to the actual licensed website.
Any other questions?
Anyone have any friends that might have been, have interactions with the DPPR?
I got a lot of that I wish they did.
You and I have emailed before.
Probably the $50,000 escrow contract.
No.
Well, hopefully our services have been good. We try, like I said, we try to be polite to everyone. And again, I know when we get complaints, the complainant will like, why are you contacting me? Because a lot of times we've got to look at everybody's side of it too. Like, what was your knowledge? What was your involvement? And stuff like that. Because other times I feel real sad, you know, because sometimes I start rooting for someone. I can't help it, you know, the double bias is like the complainant has a real thing, oh, that bad real estate agent. But then I start finding out the real estate agent was the good guy, and the complainant was really the bad person and stuff like that. And then sometimes the complainant is going against the other broker, the selling listing agent. But I started looking through the investigation. I'm like, well, where was your broker in this? I called them, well, who was your broker? Oh, it was my sister. She's 80 years old. She just got her license. I'm like, well, okay, well then, I don't really thought, well, maybe we should be really looking at the complaint against that person. So stuff like that. Just a lot of times, again, the complaints come in, it might be against the wrong person. So again, we don't open up against investigation against the other person. We just try to do it fairly and look at all parties, look at everything that happened, so that we have a clear understanding of how that person got into this situation. So we try to make sure that people aren't being in trouble or getting jammed up for no reason, whatever. So, you know, if you get a complaint, also the other thing too, like we were talking about earlier, if you do get a complaint, like, oh, I get a complaint, oh, I gotta respond to this, because it's no public information. No one will know that there's a complaint against you until it becomes a public record. For example, you're found guilty of, and then you go to the office of the general counsel, the rec meeting and stuff like that, then you're found guilty of something, that might show up as just kind of a letter of reprimand, or they'll kind of say what the complaint is, which is on one of the websites. I was telling you, if you go into the real estate, let me click back to that, where you can find out who if anyone in your area has been in trouble. If you go to this page here on myflorida.com, click on Real Estate Commission, Business Professions, Commission Information, I believe it is. It'll show like 2021, 2020, it'll tell about the different complaints that did happen and what the results were, what they were fined for, and stuff like that, because that will give you some information too, of maybe doing a checklist for yourself. Maybe I should make sure that I'm checking for this, checking for that. Because that's the other thing too, I think would be important, just to have like an index card, just to kind of go through your own information. Like if you're showing a house or you're going to be selling a house, do a checklist. Make sure, it says seller's disclosure, but maybe ask them too, have you ever had Chinese drywall? Do you know of any Chinese drywall? Do you know of any, whatever common complaints or issues are right now? Like I had one complaint recently, I had some plastic tubing called yeah, so there's a complaint against that. So just a basic check, you know, looking under the cabinet or looking at the hot water heater, find out where those pipes come in. So just 2 or 3 different checklists. You know, that will save so many, a lot of complaints that happen, because there's always the agent who didn't or just didn't disclose, acted unethically, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, you know, a couple of negligences, the words are. So again, just protect yourself too, by having just a little index card with a reminder to do 3 or 4 different checkpoints. You know, because once you ask the sellers those questions, they don't give you that information. You can at least have that to back you up and protect you. Because again, like I said, we had a lot of complaints that come in where we're supposed to find out what the intent was of the broker or the seller. You know, we can't really prove what they did know or didn't know at the time. Sometimes it gets hard. We can look in records, go back and look at permitting, things like that, but sometimes it's difficult for us to do and go beyond what the intent is.
No matter what, you know, just feel free to contact us. We're here to serve and work with you. We're here for the state of Florida. Again, we encourage you to visit our website if you have any questions. If there's anything that you are concerned about, again, you are always welcome to file a complaint. And if it ends up with one of us, hopefully we'll help to have it resolved. And
we strongly encourage you to file them, because sometimes we go through them and we see there's way more violations than you even acknowledge, because you're not always familiar with all the statutes. So, you know, that's with appraisals all the time. I find more violations than the realtor was even aware of, you know, so there are more issues, definitely.
You know, just provide as much as you can, and, you know, and we're here to assist you in anything that we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, we just want to thank Jennifer, Michael, and Felicia for being here with us at RPCRA for our Q&A session with DBPR. So if you have any questions, be sure to contact them. The website is a huge, huge resource, myfloridalicense.com. On that website, you can find out how many CE credits you have. That is a call I get all the time. How many hours do I have? How many hours do I need to renew? How do I renew my license? I did not receive it in the mail. Everything is online at myfloridalicense.com. That is a huge and a great resource for you, so be sure to do that. If you have any questions for them, please contact them. I forgot to tell you that Julie Gorman is in the back. She is our professional standards manager. So a lot of these questions you have today, sometimes you call Julie and Julie has to contact DBPR or the legal hotline. That's another resource you have, the legal hotline from Florida Realtors. So again, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. And we thank you for being here with us at RPCRA. Thank you. Y'all have a great weekend. Be safe out there in the rain. That's